So our next item is our city manager is going to kick off our budget presentations for the next couple of weeks, next several weeks. And so we'll turn the time over to Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I think that when you take a look at the cover of the budget, it really is an amazing photo, and it is incredibly symbolic of not only celebrating our 250th birthday as a country, but also the beauty and that is Twin Falls. And what a privilege it is to be able to live in a community like Twin Falls, to recreate, to raise our families. And this budget and all the work that we do is really trying to make sure that our community is left in a better space than we found it. You know, some time ago, Mitch brought the Athenian Oath to the city, and he shared that, and it really has kind of been part of that legacy, and part of that Athenian Oath is to leave it a little bit better in which you found it. And hopefully through this process, not only through budgeting, but also the work that we do as a city, we will be able to transmit the city better, and that our work here will be looked at in years to come as thoughtful, as honoring our fiduciary responsibility, and creating a platform for continued successes to be built upon. Tonight, I'm going to try a little bit different approach, but there's some basic things that we have to kind of navigate through. So why do we budget? And what is our fiscal year? So we begin our process tonight in anticipation of this budget becoming effective on October 1st. And so all of the work that we do is really a look forward, and we try to use the best information that we have to understand the health of our local economy, the ability for our community to continue to prosper, and what role does local government have in that process. And statutorily, we are required to put together an annual budget in which is balanced. So unlike other institutions and governments, our revenues and expenses must equal. And in that process, we are going to assign dollars to projects and to human talent in an effort to accomplish the work that is expected by the citizens. These are a few of the statutory guidelines that we use in following our budget. And I can share with you that this budget that is created, we'll go through the process, is really the work and the labor of many hands and the talented folks that are part of our organization. While I have the opportunity to present the budget, which is part of the enumerated statutory responsibilities that I have, as you can see in 50-811, I did not build this alone. Or if I were to have built this budget alone, it would fall short of all of the needs that we have, and I rely upon the expertise that is present tonight and all of those that have contributed to this work for your review. And that's important to state, for your review. Over the course of the next several weeks, members of our team will come forward and they will share their recommendations. But at the end of the day, it is the 7 of you that have the statutory authority to adjust, to modify, to change any part of this budget with only one condition: that at the end of the day, it remains balanced. And so we're happy to start this journey with you. Please, as you have questions as we go through this, interrupt me. And then over the course of the next several weeks, members of our team will come forward and we will present this budget very systematically in accordance to the focus areas that are contained within our city's strategic plan. The members of the team who helped build this budget will also have an opportunity to showcase and share their thoughts and expertise. So one of the things that's important to remember always at government is we are public servants. And in a sense, that translates to being a customer service entity. And understanding the expectations and needs of our customers is critically important. We utilize the citizen survey to determine where are we meeting expectations and what can we do to continue to meet or exceed those expectations. We recognize when we fall short, and we want to understand how we can improve in the eyes of our customer. Because at the end of the day, it's our fiduciary responsibility to take the resources that they provide to us and translate those dollars into tangible services. We spend a lot of time analyzing the local economy, and part of that buildup, every quarter, Brianna presents to you a very thoughtful finance report that's not just about the City of Twin Falls' budget and our overall budget health. It really is an exploration in community health. And what's the status of our local economy? And how strong is it? And where are some of the things that are causing struggle and concern with our citizens? And then what is our role in local government to help in that process? Not all problems and issues that our community faces can be solved by us. In fact, there are several where our role is to simply be a convener, to use our statutory authority to bring partners together to be able to assist in the completion of the public's work. It really comes from engaging our employees. So we have a very unique process inside of the City of Twin Falls where individuals from across the organization bring their talents and expertise to the table to help discuss the annual budget. The annual budget is not crafted in a silo in the city manager's office, but really through what we refer to as a one city approach, where all the departments operate collectively in an effort to realize the city's mission and vision. And that process utilizes the city's 2030 strategic plan and will transition to the 2040 strategic plan. It utilizes their needs. It incorporates the work that the fleet team has performed so that our rolling stock has a continual replacement schedule. And we use that to kick off the annual budgeting process. And so while we are sharing this for the first time with you publicly, members of the city's long-term planning team have already begun work on the fiscal 28 budget. We want to make sure that we're not making cuts just for the sake of making cuts. And we want to make sure that in our process, we analyze the cuts that we're making, the reductions that it may cause in services. And similarly, when we're going to expand revenues and resources, we want to understand what that return on the investment is going to be. And their work has really caused what we once referred to as a big budget balancing meeting to last just a matter of hours in comparison to a matter of days. They come together as a team, the team creates a budget, and that budget is there for your consideration. It's built upon a leadership philosophy and values that are two of the cornerstones and guiding documents of our organization to help us truly become high performing. And our work is recognized by our peers. These awards are not for the sake of earning awards and hanging more accommodations on walls. We do this because this is a best practice, and our citizens deserve the best that we have to offer. So what is Twin Falls? And in order to level set the conversation, it is important that all reviewers of this budget have a baseline understanding of how we view the economy and the city. So we're 57,000 people, and we were 51,000 people at the census, which is a 10.17% growth rate. And as we continue through that, we will crest over 60,000 persons inside of the city of Twin Falls by the year 2030. But it's not the size of the city of Twin Falls that drives our budget. It's the more than 40,000 vehicles that cross the Pine Bridge every single day. And that's only one access point inside of the city, which causes our city to grow and to expand, and for the city of Twin Falls to become a supporter of those who also visit our community. And so when you think that our area, it's important to recognize that while our estimated daytime population grows to about 112,000 plus, it's more than just cars. Because when you look at our per capita retail sales, it exceeds $2.1 billion, and our per capita retail sales in 2022 was greater than our household income in 2024. If you were to take the city of Twin Falls and you were to cut our per capita spending in half, that is back in line with the state average. There is no city in the state of Idaho that I've been able to find in utilizing the U.S. Census in which is spending more than their household income. And I think that's an important consideration because all of those individuals who come into our city have an expectation of service. And housing is a concern for all of us. The median house value in May in the city of Twin Falls, according to Zillow, was $373,000, which is a 60% increase since 2020. And the Idaho value is down slightly from its high of $506 in 2022, is still $100,000 more than the median home inside of the city of Twin Falls. Housing is a concern, and it is something that we'll talk and spend some time in. And then unemployment. Our unemployment rate is low. 3.6% is a low unemployment rate, and most economists, depending upon which ones you'll speak to, will tell you that full employment is at 4 or 5%. That tells us that the ability to attract and hire workers continues to remain a challenge, not only for our community, but also for our organization. So the first thing I'm going to share is this slide is intentionally wrong. It's intentionally wrong for two reasons. Number one, the median person that we use to create this scenario does not exist. And so no one uses the median value of water and sewer and sanitation and lives in a median house. Everything that we hear is to provide an illustration. And when I get asked, what is going to happen to my tax bill? I can't answer that because at local government level, we set the tax rate. And our partners at the county are assigned the responsibility to assess the assessed value of the home. And collectively, that is going to determine a tax burden that is placed on each of our individual citizens moving forward. The second reason it's wrong is because you will notice that we say that sanitation and recycling is going to cost us the same this year as it did last year. And with our recent request for proposals from PSI, we know that the price for sanitation is going to decrease. We do not know at this time the full level of services that the council is going to select. So we elected to leave it the same. So at worst, it may be $2 per month less than what we're reflecting now. And at best, it could be upwards of $9 per month less. And so when you focus on $2 or $9, you can see that variance per month does change. And that will be a conversation with the PSI contract as it will mature as the summer goes on. But from a starting point, we felt it was safe to present what is the worst possible scenario. We want to share a whole series of charts and graphs because these are the things that cause us to say, is this budget sustainable in the long term? Does the citizens of our community have the ability to pay the bills that we are going to pass on to them as we transfer them into services? And so what we've done is a reflection on home values, not only in Twin Falls, but Idaho and Boise, and we have a running total just to kind of show how that is increased. And it's increased $147,000 since 2020, or by more than 60%. And each one of those increases is reflected, and you can see that May compared to January, it continues to grow. So why do we pick January? January is the point in time in which the assessments of our properties are determined, and that is what we use for property taxes in part of our calculation. And then the other thing we want to understand is what's going to potentially occur over the course of the next 12 months, because as our budgets continue to evolve, we want to make sure that does the city and our residents continue to have the ability to pay property taxes. And if you follow the news, there are some who believe the abolishment of property taxes would be smart. And while no one likes to pay property taxes, me included, I don't get a waiver on the property tax bill that I have to pay. My failure to pay property taxes, even though I'm employed by the city, would result in my house becoming default. And if it's in a state of default, it can be appropriately seized by the county. So we're mindful in our own organization about the property tax burdens that are passed on by local government. But I will also say that one of the things that local government, including the city of Twin Falls, needs to do a better job at is sharing the return on the investment. What do individuals receive for their property taxes? And what are some other tools and mechanisms that we can use to lessen that property tax burden? I'm becoming more and more convinced that the Idaho legislature, I'll speak to two, should they be successful in November, needs to seriously look at the opportunity of a local option sales tax. If the city of Twin Falls, based upon $2.1 billion of retail sales, was able to collect a penny, and we returned half of that collection back in the form of property tax relief, the city of Twin Falls would have about $10 to $10.5 million more to be able to support critical infrastructure, public safety, and those that impact our community on a daily basis. In addition to that, we could cut property taxes by an equal $10.5 million. $10.5 million off of $32 million worth of property tax collections means we could provide immediate property tax relief now. But we're not allowed to ask the question. In a Dillon rule state, we are only allowed the powers that the legislature sees fit. And while our citizens may want it, we are not allowed to ask the question. I believe our citizens should have an opportunity to at least answer the question. They may say no, and that's okay. But not being able to ask the question in exchange for true property tax relief inside of the city of Twin Falls, I believe is a disservice to local government. One of the great tools that we take a look at has been developed by a news entity, and it is the Home Buyers Index. And that Home Buyers Index assigns a number between 0 and 100. And the higher the number, the more difficult it is to acquire a home. And so when you take a look at the top graph, how property has changed since 2018 to 2026, you can see that it has grown. This is countywide data. This is not available at the city level. Okay? So this is a reflection just on counties. And inside of our county, you can see that the first graph shows that the escalation of the median list price of a home has increased from $200,000 in 2018 to $425,000 in 2026. Different than Zillow. Why it's different than Zillow, I can't answer that. I trust the data. And I will also share that at the bottom it talks about the buying power. And it reflects where the buying power, what our median income families can afford. And you can see that gap that they can afford a home at $382,000 inside of the county. Again, Zillow focuses only inside of the city proper. It does not focus, we don't focus on the county. And you can see what that disparity is. And what does that mean? That means that Twin Falls County is the fourth worst overall county when it comes to this in the 1,898 counties surveyed across the country. And we're the most difficult in the state of Idaho. Access to homes is critical. It's not only critical for the fabric that is our communities, the laborers, the teachers, those in the medical profession, all of the members of our organization. It's our ability to continue to raise a family and the financial stress and pressures that are placed upon our families and our community as a result of homeownership. We focus on cost. And the municipal cost index is, for this year, from March to March, when we measure it, was up 1.9%. And that sounds really good. It's the steep climb since this last year that has been compounding, where the cost has increased of municipal services from March of 21 to March of 25, more than 20%. And our municipal cost index is different than a consumer price index. It focuses on the basket of goods that governments typically consume most. Asphalt, diesel, cement, all of the things that cause us to go and where our cost variations are. And as many have come before you and talked about costs and increasing costs as they are presenting budgets and asking for some level of support through reserves to be able to complete the project, those projects don't go away because they become more expensive. Sometimes what happens is those projects become deferred, and we increase the list of deferred maintenance. And we can hope and wish that some of our infrastructure problems can have healing processes of their own. But in reality, that's not true. And when we fail to make investments in our infrastructure, we are not setting a foundation for our community to be able to grow, and we're not transmitting the city better in which we found it. So the report that Josh presented to you tonight was really about an opportunity to explore what do we need to be doing as a community to be fixing a water corridor to ensure that we have water when we turn on the faucet. Because I'm going to bet that there wasn't many people that when we all woke up this morning at whatever time that was and we went to make our coffee or brush our teeth or take a shower, did we have an expectation that the water wouldn't turn on? And if the water didn't turn on, there were some pretty angry phone calls that were coming into city because we were disrupting their day. My son's currently serving a short-term mission in the Dominican Republic, and he can't use the water to brush his teeth. But yet it becomes an expectation of our community and not even a second thought as to whether or not our water is clean. And I'm going to entirely bet that just as I was mindless when I turned on my faucet, I didn't give a second thought as to where it went either. And behind all of that is a critical infrastructure that is manned by talented men and women to make sure that the magic happens.
It is exciting.
It is exciting. And sometimes it's even more exciting when we fail to deliver. But part of that corridor study is to ask ourselves, is the timing right to ask the citizens to invest more in our infrastructure in a form of a bond? That's what we're exploring. We have a water tank that we're going to be spending more time about in subsequent weeks. That's more than 50 years old. That is literally the heart of our water system. And if that system were to fail on a July day, the access to clean drinking water is problematic. The inability to have fire flow could be detrimental. So we're going to continue to explore ways to invest in our infrastructure throughout subsequent conversations. We also need to find a way to continue to invest in our employees. The men and women that work for the city of Twin Falls are on the front lines of customer service. They are the ones who respond during the time of need when the water doesn't be delivered in the manner that we expect, when we had to make a call because your kid or your neighbor inadvertently light a firework and sparked a small brush fire. It's all of those things that we call, and there's an expectation that government comes. And holding on to talent is one of the cornerstones of our organization, and it needs to continue to be so. Our organization has great tenured folks that at some point in time are going to make a transition from working to retirement. And as they transition, we need to make sure that we continue to be that employer of choice to offer packages and services to attract and retain talent, because the talent is getting scarce. There are fewer people that want to go into local government today. There are fewer people yet who want to be first responders. Yet, that's part of our critical infrastructure, and it's a primary function of what we do. We're not alone. What this slide shares is that there are more job openings in the state of Idaho than there are unemployed workers. That's not qualified workers. That's unemployed workers. The labor market remains tight, and it is important for us to be competitive. And I will be unapologetic in presenting this budget when I'm asking for raises. When I'm asking that we make sure that the men and women work here have the ability to provide for their families. I'm not saying with extravagance, but in a way that is appropriate for them. But as we do all of these things and we talk about these expenditures, we want to be mindful that it is following these 6 goals established by the City Council. Among them, and being important, is that it is stable and sustainable and nimble. Every year there seems to be something that causes a shock to the system, whether that's COVID or conflicts in the Middle East. Something is going to cause our local economy and our national economy to go through some sort of bump. And we need to be able to be sensitive to our operating environment to be able to respond to that. We want to be the employer of choice. We want to make sure that our taxes are sustainable. And we also want to make sure that we're maximizing our utility increases. So here's the city's total taxable value. This is a city of how we are in a nutshell. We're going to ask for a 5% increase in water and sewer this year to be able to support that critical infrastructure. We've asked for a 3% property tax increase in revenue compared to the last year. We've asked to use 90% of the full value of the new construction roll that was submitted to us, and using a portion of the foregone balance this year. And this is the last year that we will be able to use 1% of the foregone balance. Because after this, that value that we have had in the bank will be evaporated. And so as an entity, we've already had conversations that future budgets are going to have less predictable revenues than the one that we have now. And we are going to have to continue to use data in the form of performance measurement and priority-based budgeting to make sure we're doing the right what for our citizens. And in the spirit of one city that's hanging on all of our walls, there are 7 diagnostic questions that we ask. And part of them have to deal with the finances. And it asks us, are we doing the right what? Which goes back to our citizen survey, which helps us understand what do the citizens need, what do they want, what are the level of services that they expect, and how are we going to systematically be able to provide that? And the tax rate this year is going to go down. So here's the growth of the city, which is incredibly impressive that if you think that just since 2021, the total taxable value of the city has nearly doubled. It was $3.4 million in 2021. It is nearly $6.8 million this year. And that excludes $717 million that's inside of the urban renewal areas. So collectively, the value that is encompassed inside of the city of Twin Falls' corporate boundaries now exceeds $7.5
Travis, I
billion.
think Grayson's got a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have 2 quick questions for you. One on slide 15.
That's not helpful.
Well,
I don't have.
I'm sorry, they're all labeled.
Go
So
back.
on the City of Twin Falls unemployment rate, we have it at
That one.
3.6 this year. Yep, that one.
Yep, that was from May. It fluctuates every May, and we get the numbers from the jobs report furnished to us by the Idaho Department of Commerce.
I remember in one of your presentations, and you said essentially anybody in our MSA that wanted a job could have a job.
Yes,
Is that percentage reflect that mentality still?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
And more importantly, and I'll point this out, I want to be mindful of a soccer match. And I know that you have this information to be able to take with you. Yeah, everybody in America has become a football fan, right? And football, F-U-T-B-O-L. Twin Falls is growing, yet year over year, we lost 99 laborers. But while the city of Twin Falls is growing, those who are in the labor market is shrinking. And according to the Idaho Department of Commerce, 75 of those individuals left last month. Not everyone who's coming to Twin Falls is working. Not everyone that's coming into our community is contributing to the workforce.
And then just a quick follow-up question. I just want to reiterate, you just stated based upon the data on slide 18 with the property taxes, that our tax rate for the city of Twin Falls is actually going down.
It is, and we'll get into that. It is going down.
I just want to make that abundantly clear.
Our tax rate is going down.
Thank you.
Yep. In fact, here's that slide. Our tax rate last year compared to this year is going to go down slightly. And it reflects all of those tax rates since 2021. And if you follow that graph and you were to do a linear regression, you can see that it is downward trending. One of the questions we get asked is, how does my property taxes that I pay inside the city of Twin Falls equal to other cities inside of the state of Idaho? And we use a couple of different sources to help determine that. We use Zillow because it's consistent and what's what we have access to in measuring all the properties inside of the state of Idaho. And then we also use the Associated Taxpayers of Idaho levy book, which shares with us the tax rate that is provided to the Secretary of State's office at the conclusion of every budget process. And so these are rear looking. So if you take a look, the city of Twin Falls, total city taxes paid on a median home in January 25, which had a value of $363,286 against our tax rate last year, paid $1,337.02. Now, people will say, I pay more than that in property taxes. We're going to say, yes, we recognize that. This is only the city's share and only the city's portion because that's all that we have control over. If people scroll down and they look at their assessment, there are many other institutions that the city of Twin Falls doesn't have the ability to control what they do, and nor should we. We can control ourselves. And when you take a look at the city tax burden in comparison to other full-service cities in the state of Idaho, we are among the lowest. And you'll ask yourself, but there are big three cities that you're leaving off the table. You left off Boise, you left off Meridian, and you left off Nampa. And there's reason for that. The first is streets are maintained and developed by the Ada County Highway District inside of Ada County. So none of those cities offer road services, which is a significant part of our budget. And then recently, the city of Nampa elected to have its fire department that was once in-house be transformed into a fire district. And so the city of Nampa no longer offers fire services, which is a significant portion of our budget as well. And so we're not able to really compare apples to apples to those cities. And I don't think it's a fair comparison to do multiple additions to their tax rates for what that could be. So we focus on something very clean, and this is where the city of Twin Falls stacks up. Any questions on the economics that we use? Hopefully there were no surprises. So we say that government budget is the lifeblood because this budget right here is how we intend to allocate $65 million of tax-supported funds, which is defined by any part of that budget that relies on a portion of property taxes to operate, and then enterprise funds, or non-tax supported, of $32 million. Those two pieces, one paid for by user fees, one part funded, and then other non-tax supported funds, really makes up the entirety of the city of Twin Falls budget. So our budget this year totals $102 million, which is $1 million increase, $1,122,000, 1.1% compared to last year. Bouncing back, the municipal cost index was 1.9%. Most of that is driven by the use of cash reserves in the tune of $4,700,000 $600,000 to complete one-time projects. And enterprise funds decreased by $3.5 million because those projects that were funded by one-time cash reserves have been funded and completed. So when you take a look at our budget, it is fairly static in comparison to years past. A lot of the budget that we're going to spend time talking about moving forward is what we refer to as the net budget, because we remove the transfers. We can get into the government detail if people want to, but a transfer is a rent that we charge the enterprise funds, and so for the sake of making sure that we're not double counting, we want to make sure that we are talking budget to budget. You can see that we break our budget into 5 major categories. The first and the largest is personnel. When you think about being a customer service entity, it makes sense that our people, the talent that we employ, are the largest driving share of our budget, followed by operation and maintenance and capital, which is similar this year. And for a city the size that we are, to have debt service in the tune of 3.4% is remarkable. We have no general obligation debt. The only debt that we have presently is inside of the sewer fund, and that is a result of the 2012 wastewater treatment plant expansion, which was very thoughtful, because today at the wastewater treatment plant, we have capacity to be able to grow and expand our local economy. And I believe that's where Councilman Reed got his first taste into local government. So when you think about the tax-supported funds, they value $61.87 million of the $97 million net budget. And then we kind of go through where the revenues are coming in. And you can see that 51% of the tax-supported budget, or the government fund budget, is supported by property taxes. And so when there's a conversation that Idaho should do away with property taxes, I struggle to understand how we would make up in excess of $32 million for services. So what does property taxes pay for inside the city of Twin Falls? I can tell you that it does not pay the entire cost of police, fire, roads, and prosecution. Those 4 entities inside of our city cost more than the entirety of the property taxes that we collect. All the other pieces are from those shared revenues that you see, and dedicated street reserves, and transfers, and franchise fees, and other financing sources, such as earned interest, building permit revenues. This is a reflection of the new construction value and annexation of the city. This year, it was at $95 million, which will yield an additional $473,000 of new property tax revenue. And you can see how it ebbs and flows. Building permit revenues are one part of the equation. It is the fee that is paid on that front end. And then the property tax piece of that is the portion that we use to sustain operations long term. I think this is a reflection on the importance of economic development. Continuing to grow your local economy, the ability to add more payers into your system helps us spread that burden and load across more payers in absence of a local option sales tax. And this is building permit revenue. You can see that from building permit revenue, this is just building permit revenue. This is not electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. This is just building permit revenue, and it is flat this year for what we're projecting. In all of the building permit reports that we supply, that is developed by Matthew Long in the building department, you can see that housing starts are down, commercial starts are down, and that could have a direct impact on new construction value in subsequent years. So we're mindful. We don't want to overinflate building permit revenue. We don't want to chase year after year, because if we were to have said that we're going to put this at $1.7 million, this year we would have a $700,000 potential hole in our overall budget. And we'd be talking about holdbacks. We would be talking about freezing expenditures. Similar conversations that the state had in January, but our processes really are mindful and allow us to be nimble. And we budget conservatively to make sure that we are living within our means and that we have the resources to move forward. A wise old rancher, I shouldn't say old, in Scott Bedke.
Old. Not old.
Shouldn't say old. Strike that. Shared with me one time that the family farm doesn't go bankrupt in the bad years. It's the good years in which it overspends, overcommits. We want to make sure that when we have those good years, that we're using monies that are one time and one time only so that our budget remains sustainable long-term. And inside the enterprise funds, we go through a detailed calculation of what those look like. The enterprise funds, you can see that nearly 47% of that is to fund our water and our water system. 37% is to fund our wastewater system. 13% is to service the PSI contract that we have for solid waste and recycling services. And the other non-major 2.1%, that's Shoshone Falls and Turkey's Lake and other things that rely on user fees to be able to support their operations. So focusing on our people, we're looking at a 3% performance adjustment this year and a 3% table move to our general employees. That doesn't mean that 3 + 3 = 6. Our pay table is much more complicated than that. It means that we'll shift our pay table at the start and at the ending points, and that people will navigate in between that. We're asking for continued funding of the $900 employee VEBA account, $1,000 per employee for our HSA contribution, which is tied to our health insurance plan, to maintain health insurance funding. Gretchen shared with me some data a little earlier today. And I want to just speak to the ingenuity of our team. So had we not changed our health insurance plan when we did, moving and adding a high deductible plan, and maintained a traditional plan since 2018, and then through the other iterations, now going to a self-insured model, the city of Twin Falls would spend $2,193,000 more health insurance than what we do today. $2 million. Over the course of the last 2 years, we've been able to maintain health insurance benefits for our employees and not increase costs because of the movement to being self-insured. In those 2 years alone, we've saved nearly $900,000 in actual premiums. And this year, cross fingers, if I win my bet with Brianna, it'll be even more. We are asking for 2 new employees. One that is fully funded, which is a project manager, which was suggested by the council last year and affirmed during our first budget conversation earlier this year. And that project manager will be in the engineering department, entirely dedicated to parks for as long as we have those parks loads. But to ensure that we have that talent appropriately positioned in our organization, we wanted to make sure that should we not invest in the parks and the trails and the systems that we are at the current rates, that that talent can be moved to fund other project pieces. And you can see the total burden of that cost of that employee is $120,776. And then we also included a school resource officer for the new charter school at their request that is going to come into our community and will start operations later this fall. However, 90% of the $92,000 is reimbursed by the charter school because they will use this person 90% of their working year. 10% of that time will be the burden of the city. And so we will be adding a police officer to the city of Twin Falls for the net cost of $9,256. Those are the only two new positions. But please don't believe that those are the only positions that we wanted. We spent time inside of the budget talking about all of the additional positions that were asked by employees because there's a true need. The work of servicing a community of 116,000 people is on the backs of 356. And when you take a look at that ratio per thousand served, it is right around 3 and is one of the smallest staffs of full service cities in the state of Idaho. Operation and maintenance, you can see, has increased about 2.19%, $500,000, which is about in line with the municipal cost index for this year. And we still continue to play catch up from those years that impacted us in the past since 2020. And then you can see that our expenditure on capital this year is $23 million. The ebbs and flows of capital really talks about one-time money. The monies that came in, a part of the SLFRF, have been expended. That is one of the sources of the largest drop. But if you take a look at the investment that we've made inside of the city of Twin Falls since 2016, it is more than $213.6 million. Again, this council has been thoughtful in creating a foundation for us to continue to build our community, and our work is not done. Any questions on the overview of the budget? So like I said, we build our budget around a strategic plan. We're in the last year of this strategic plan, and next year our budget will be focused and used to fund the 2040 strategic plan. This year was a bit of a blended approach because of timing. A lot of the main initiatives are the same, the focus areas remain the same, and so internally we'll do some rectifying of what that budget looks like as its connection to our strategic plan. But it is driven by these focus areas, and like I shared, over the course of the next several weeks, we will break this budget from a high-level overview into each one of these focus areas. So I'm just going to hit this really, really quick because you're going to hear this over the course of the next several weeks. I may not have a lot of comment on these budgets. They're inside of your slides, but at the very beginning, we talk about what the vision is. That vision was created in concert with the council, our community members, commissions and advisory groups, staff members. Really, what is the vision of the city that we expect to 2030, and how do we hang that out there? And then what are the individual ladder steps that we need to achieve on an annual basis to realize that vision? So that's what we fund. And so you can see that we break that down by department, by fund, on how each of those individual funding types are going to help us in realizing a healthy community. The next vision is going to be really how do we create a learning community, which is going to be talking about the library. A secure community is going to talk about all of those elements inside of public safety. These are some of the highlights that are being asked for in this process. I can slow down, but I also know that you're going to hear this a lot over the course of the next several weeks. I should say that all of this is going to be available online. Our budget will be online. Our individual presentations, if individuals want to review them, are going to be online. We're accessible by email. We can set up appointments for our community to have conversations moving through this. I'm not moving through this rapidly to kind of hide something. I just know that over the course of the next 8 weeks, you're going to be having conversations about each one of these projects in greater detail. And I will tell you the 13 conversations that you have about the budget on an annual basis is probably more by a factor of several than what other communities are doing in their budgetary conversations annually. We're trying to fund and create a prosperous community. Part of our being a responsible community is being part of that involvement. And in this budget, we've dedicated $820,000 towards council capital projects, one-time projects that each of the members of the team are going to say, these didn't make the long-term planning list to fund. We would like for your consideration for these projects. And you may have some of your own. The citizens may come forward and they may say, we think that this is important, and it really is an opportunity for the community to engage and to advise the council on how to allocate an additional $820,000 towards one-time projects. We want to make sure they stay one-time because, again, we want it to be sustainable. And anything that we put into ongoing is something that we are going to have to account for in subsequent years, which may or may not be possible depending upon the state of our local economy. As a refresher, these are the projects last year that you committed. We had a little bit more money than the typical $770,000 because we had a larger new construction final value than what we were anticipating when we set the budget. So these are the projects, and members of our team have shared and talked about what some of those projects look like, and will continue to advise the council on how to fund projects. We spent some time talking about the employees. An additional piece, there's about $373,000. There's a typo, it's not 375, $373,000 in targeted compensation adjustments. It is important for us to go through and analyze our pay structure. And we continue to do that. And our target at the executive team level is to have a proposal that is ripe and ready to implement later this year. We're still working through the data set to make sure that the information that we have fits our organization. But again, that is part of being an employer of choice, is thoughtfully evaluating your compensation plans and structures and then making sure that they are sustainable long-term. We anticipate that 375 or 373, will be incorporated into the budget in the form of strategic compensation adjustments where we're failing on a market perspective long-term, and to help solve that problem. And here's your schedule. This is your roadmap. So you'll see next year we're going to be talking about focus areas 1, 7, and 8, which is going to be a healthy community, responsible community, and our employees. And with that, happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions for Travis on the presentation?
Thank you, Travis. Very thorough, as usual.
I guess we'll look forward to the coming weeks. Ruth, you got a question or?
No.
Okay. So I guess we'll look forward to the coming weeks and digging in a little bit deeper. Thank you for the presentation tonight, Travis.
I did have one question. No,
I was so close.
The new guy.
I'll say one.
The new guy.
I'm going to do it. So I went through, because I was reading the budget, and the word maintain came up a lot. So I did a word search. I think maintenance and maintaining come up like 290 times.
So you're telling me I need to expand my vocabulary?
No. I guess my thought was, do you think that we as a city are cataloging and have an accurate, I guess, our hands around all of the maintenance that we actually have. I know because there's some statutorily that we have to do, some that we're adding to it when we do new projects. Do you feel you have a good grasp on that is my question.
I believe that we probably know more than what we don't know.
That's a great answer. We would hope
But-
so,
but-
yeah.
But there are surprises.
Yeah.
We have old systems. And members of our team, especially in water and water delivery and wastewater, can't see the pipes that are underground. And we get surprised. And we've had some surprises this year with irrigation lines that have failed and have caused the roads to go away. And the condition of those pipes weren't immediately known. We have facility plans that say this is how much money we should be investing in our systems on an annual basis. I believe, you can look at the dudes behind me, see if I get this right. I believe our water facility plan says that we should be spending in excess of $3 million a year replacing existing lines. I believe this is the first year that we'll hit that benchmark. But Rob Bowling will tell you that at $3 million a year, it's going to take us decades to be able to fix all of the water lines that are undersized inside of our community, and that doesn't talk growth. We have water facility plans that describe the projects that we need to move forward with. Part of the work that Josh is doing in Public Works with the JUB contract is to understand what additional monies that we need, maybe in the form of a revenue bond, to be able to ensure that we can build a $20 million, 10 million gallon water tank to ensure that we can assure water delivery. We do not have the ability to fund all of the needs. We, through a budgeting process, try to pick those items that are potentially the more significant items that, should there be a catastrophe, we have responded appropriately. When you take a look at impact fees and the amount of projects that are on impact fee list, we don't ask in the impact fee to fund all 20 traffic signals. We describe 20 traffic signals that need to be replaced, probably all in excess of $600,000, and we fund 4 or 5. Because we need to make sure that the budget that we present is also sustainable. Not only sustainable for the city as an operating entity, but sustainable for the pocketbooks that we're asking our citizens to pay for. And as we continue to grow our economy, we need to remain competitive. And so it's a balance. So when I say hopefully most, I believe we have a talented people that are very thoughtful. There is certainly more that we could do. And this certainly does not fund all of the potential issues that are out there. And that is why we carry the cash reserves that we do. So in the time of emergency, we have the ability to dip into our bank account and to make those one-time expenditures without burdening our citizens for those costs.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Travis.